In a world where God is dying, 4 heathens come to deliver the final nails in the coffin. From the depths of hell, Satan sends 4 puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists from the Middle East.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Secular Jihadist podcast. I'm the host, Faisal Saeed al-Baghdadi.
Oh my God, you have such a cute face, Faisal.
He looks cuter than usual today.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm telling you, it's like the baby in the crib just smiles, does nothing else, and you're like, aw. And you want to pick him up. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. Anyway, go on.
So we have the usual suspects in the podcast. Yasmin Muhammad, the author of Confessions of an Ex-Muslim and the confessionofanexmuslim.com. Hello, Yasmin.
Hello, Faisal.
Hi. And we have Ali Rizvi, the author of The Atheist Muslim. He recently got a Vox interview that people can check out. And
Vox, not Fox. It's Vox with a V. Just
hey, come
wanted
on.
to say the two very different. Anyway.
I said Vox. Come on, brother.
Okay.
Tandoori chicken.
Al-Islamu alaikum.
And we have Armin Navabi, the Iranian Mossad agents who also happened to found the Hezbollah and the Atheist Republic at the same time. So good job. Good job, Armin.
Thank you.
And our guest is ex-Muslim / ex-Mormon / member of ISIS. Jenn al-Pakistani. Al-Pakistaniya. So Jenn got married with a guy from Pakistan. I think because... Is it true that you have desert fever? Is that correct?
Desert?
Once you go, what is it? What is it, Ali? Once you go Pakistan, you never go Pakistan.
Once you go Pakistan, you never go Pakistan. That's I gotta credit Kumail Nanjiani with that. That was not him do that.
So Jenn happened to be in love with tandoori and chicken tikka masala, and she happened to marry a guy, and she happens to have a desert fever. Is actually, does Pakistan have a desert, or is it like an all green area?
Nah, not really. India's got a desert, but
okay,
Pakistan.
so it's more like, so you have mountain fever.
Where's the Thar? I think the Thar Desert. Yeah. No, Pakistan doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, if you are attracted to guys from the Middle East, it's called desert fever. If you are from East Asia, it's yellow fever. And the other part is
brown fever.
Tandoori fever.
Actually, no, it does. The Thar Desert is part of it's in the border region between India and Pakistan. So if we're on desert fever, that's
she has desert-ish fever.
So she has desert-ish fever, and
dessert,
she
maybe.
Yeah,
dessert.
Baklawa. She has a baklawa fever.
Oh God. There's no guys. There's no baklava in Pakistan. We haven't. You guys have just.
You have gulab.
It's just you
gulab
guys are
jamun.
being
Oh, that's
racist.
India.
Yeah.
we have rice pudding fever.
We do. We have kheer. We've got
Mango
gulab
lassi.
jamun. With gulab jamun. Jenn, can we agree on gulab jamun? Can we agree on?
Yeah.
Amazing. Is that
the orange one? The orange swirly one?
Yeah. It looks like it's.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like Donald Trump's skin in a way. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So, hello, Jenn. Welcome to our podcast. Do you guys have any questions for the white women in the podcast?
No, not at all. That's it. Okay, thank you, Jenn. Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
So, Jenn, no, actually, okay. So, Jenn, so you have a you have experience with the Muslim world up close. You have experience with Mormons, right? So you're an ex-Mormon and an ex-Muslim is the way that you described yourself. Is that accurate? So can you kind of just start and unpack that and tell us how that happened?
So I was born in a Mormon, and my family, it was Mormon generations back, related to the second prophet of the Mormon church. So it's a big deal. I was always very proud of that fact when I was young. And I liked being Mormon until I didn't. I was about, well, I had gotten pregnant and lost a son when I was very young, and it kind of had me questioning God at that point. So I started looking into other religions, and then at the same time I met my ex-husband online. We started talking for about a year, and then he came to visit and we got married. I took the Shahada for the first time in America. I took the Shahada the second time in Scotland. We got married in Scotland.
So I just want to clear up Shahada for people who don't know is that it's basically the declaration of faith in Islam. So you say that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, and then you become a Muslim by saying that.
Yeah. Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasul.
It's magic.
I'm Muslim now.
Now you're a Muslim.
Yeah. Okay, now I can't be here anymore.
I know.
Sorry,
so you took you took the Shahada and you met your husband online. Where was he at the time?
He was in Scotland.
He was in Scotland. Okay,
Yeah,
so you
he
took the
was
Shahada
studying.
first here and then in Scotland.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I even got a certificate. Fancy certificate. I don't have it anymore, but I did. I was very proud of it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was.
What was that? You're very proud of what? I didn't hear that.
The certificate saying I was a Muslim.
Really? They gave you a certificate?
Yeah. I was so excited to be a Muslim. Like I jumped in.
Why?
with
What
everything.
was it about being a Muslim that intrigued you?
I think it was safe. I know that sounds crazy now, but because of the Mormon church is very controlling. It's very much a cult.
Okay.
So I was used to being told what to do as a woman because the men are the head of household, and
I'm still not hearing how this is different from Islam.
No, but let's but go on.
Yeah, keep going.
No, please go on. I want to hear this. This is fascinating.
I met this man, and it was very romantic. It was foreign. It was different, and
that's what it is.
I prayed, and I got that little warm, fuzzy feeling in my chest that told me that it was real. And then I started studying a lot, but I really didn't want to be responsible for any of my own decisions. I mean, that was the bottom line. I wanted to be taken care of. Even though I was working and financially providing for myself, I felt like I needed to be controlled. So I sought out, the more controlling than the Mormon faith, which is crazy. So I sought that out, and that's what I found. But that's what, was attractive to me about it. And the routine was a big thing that I was attracted to. The praying 5 times a day. I had grown up in an environment that was chaotic. I didn't have a mom. I had a lot of brothers, and it was just like, so any kind of routine was attractive to me. So.
Wow.
And you were saying before also just the exotic nature of it, the fact that it's like Far East religion.
Yeah, well,
with Faisal called desert fever.
The religion that I was raised in was very racist. You couldn't even be a member of the church until 78, or if you were black, like they wouldn't let you be a member. We were taught that the more pious and good you were, the lighter your skin would become. So, literally.
If I could just interject, in Islam we have something like that too. So black Muslims, when they go to heaven, they become white.
It's crazy. The
Yeah,
whole
Bilal became white when
the racist
Yeah,
stuff.
only if they're really good though.
The virgins in heaven in the Quran, the Huris, are described as wide-eyed in the Quran, which means that, and I used to tell people, like, when you see all these things on the internet, it's like, do you have an Asian fetish? I'm like, well, those people are screwed, right?
Yeah.
And also skin
unless,
so white that you can see their veins.
Bone marrow.
Through them.
You can see their bone marrow. That's how white. So there's a lot of racial elements to the Huris too. It's fascinating.
Unless you have an anime fetish, then you're good.
Anime. Yeah, well then you're good on Earth because you're not really nothing's happening. But
anyway, sorry. So they were racist.
I really believed that people with dark skin Well, Mormons, you exist in the pre-existence. So before you get a body, everyone's up in heaven together. And there was the big battle, and the people that had dark skin were less valiant. They didn't fight as hard in the battle in the pre-existence. So they were automatically bad, if that makes sense. Like, so I looked at them like they were lesser. And my dad was very racist. He drove me around to bad areas in LA and would tell me, don't ever marry somebody with dark skin because this will be your life. And so I did exactly what he told me not to do and found somebody with brown skin.
Did you view your husband as lesser when you married him? He had dark skin.
No, because as I was coming out of the Mormon church and studying Islam, I kind of lost a lot of that, that I'm better. Because we used to say I was very, like, I'm overweight. I was very overweight. I was 350 pounds.
When you met him online.
Which was another reason why they kind of like the big girls. It's slim pickings when you're giant. You know what I mean? So, he made me feel beautiful.
He liked the kebab.
He did. So he made me feel beautiful.
He likes the junk in the trunk.
He told me the body's a vessel and it doesn't matter what you look like. And it's the afterlife. And it was poetry and how beautiful Islam was and how wonderful Muhammad was. And he was the first feminist. And I believed all of it at first. That was the attraction.
Well, I mean, what's really interesting is that when Islam first came to India, one of the reasons it was so appealing to people is they had the caste system there. And the caste system, basically, if you were born in one of the lower castes, like the untouchables, then you were doomed to stay there forever. And then Islam came in and they had, we had Bilal, the black slave, blah, blah, blah. And in Islam, everybody's the same as long as you take the Shahada. Right. And the Shahada, again, is a declaration of Islamic faith. And, once you do that, everybody's the same. So a lot of the people from the lower castes started converting to Islam. And then they started, pretty much sticking their middle finger up to the caste system. So that's actually a way in which I remember when we were younger, we were shown Hajj, like when they showed everybody, like, look, everybody, all races, all cultures, everybody's just wearing those 2 white towels or, the ihram. And it sort of equalizes it. It's marketed that way. Of course, it's not like that in practice.
But it is kind of true. I mean, both Islam and Christianity are both, to some extent, a universalist religions.
You convert Judaism, whoever you are, you convert, you're in.
Yeah. Like if you look at Judaism, it's much more of a tribal religion that your mother has to be Jewish for you to be considered Jewish. But with Islam and Christianity, if you convert to that religion,
they take you.
That being said, there are the dynamics of Arab nationalism / all of these things, of all the racism. Iraqis hate Saudis, Saudis hate Lebanese, Lebanese hate Pakistanis. Like, there are all these.
So, Jen, did you ever move to Scotland then? Is that what happened? So you met him online, you did your Shahada, and then you moved to Scotland, or what was the next step?
I lived there for years. And then we moved around a lot because he was in finance. So I started taking prayer classes and I started taking classes to learn how to read Arabic so I had to do it right? So
hold on, so he's Pakistani, wants to learn Arabic?
Yeah, well his mom's family's from India and the dad's family's from Pakistan. Prior to the partition, I think the dad's family went to Pakistan, is how it worked.
But both of these countries don't speak Arabic, though.
Right. So
I know, but we love the Arabs, though. Pakistan's they give all their kids Arab names or Iranian names. They really look up to they have they have this like inferiority complex when it comes to Arabs and Iran. The Sunnis mainly for the Arabs, and then all the Sunnis in Pakistan want to become Arab, and all the Shias in Pakistan want to become Iranian.
You're all Shia, really right? Except for Yaz. You guys all have Shia backgrounds?
Shia backgrounds, yeah.
Terms and conditions apply. Yeah. I'm not as the most Shia person you would ever meet. But yeah.
I didn't realize the difference because it was Sunni, that I had converted into. We had Shia friends we had to hide our friendships with. Like we couldn't let his parents or family know that we were friends with them because it was forbidden. Like we couldn't even speak to them. I didn't understand it.
So this is a pretty conservative.
Yeah. So they
and sectarian. Yeah.
That's the way it was with me too, Jen. They weren't allowed in our mosque.
I didn't understand it because I came from, I understood racism and I understood people feeling like they're better, but I didn't understand the whole Sunni Shia thing at all. But eventually I started to feel negatively towards Shia, because I was just like, well, there must be a reason why they don't like him so much. Same thing for,
Oh, there is.
yeah, there's something terrible.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah,
Tell me about it.
So, it's funny how you hear it enough, and the brainwashing, it just, you start to, it's like the negative comments about Jews that I heard all the time, and I started to think bad things about Jews too. That there was not hateful things, but I've talked about it very openly. I was very extreme. So I was very hateful of Jews and very celebratory of terrorist activities.
Do you have videos and sermons that you have given that are available online for people to see your transformation?
No.
But Jenn has had conversations once she became an atheist. So she's got a very detailed podcast with Lalo Dagash where she goes into her history.
That's awesome.
So Jenn, when you were, so now you're in Pakistan, I just wondering how many years were you Muslim? Because I've heard this thing that Muslim converts usually stay Muslim for about 5 years before they see the light.
I was 12. Yeah.
12 years, right?
Yeah.
So how did you, so your ex-husband was in Scotland. You went there, and how did you end up in Pakistan, and where in Pakistan did you end up?
Faisalabad.
You're in Faisalabad, okay, up in the Punjab.
Yeah. Well, we went for family vacations a lot, and we traveled a lot. So that's pretty much how. Initially, it was just for traveling and things, but things got a little bit crazy towards the end. I mean, towards the last few years when he took the kids. So that's why I wound up over there.
Oh, okay. So do you want to talk about it? Like what happened? How did it get crazy?
Well, I came home from work one day and my kids were gone, and he'd taken them. So,
wow. So this
Wait a minute. Were you in Pakistan or in Scotland?
I was in Scotland.
And your kids were gone, like he had taken them to Pakistan?
Mm-hmm.
And you flew to Pakistan to see them?
I had to go. Yeah, I went with his sister. He has a sister that's she's lesbian, and I'm not, like, they don't ever talk about it. She's kind of went away from the family for 15 or 17 years or so.
That's weird, because I heard that Islam is not homophobic at all, and it's super gay friendly.
Right? It's so gay friendly. Like, they didn't disown her or anything for being gay. But so it took years to get them back. Not necessarily like get them back. It wasn't like a not without my daughter thing. I didn't have to go like rescue them with like, I had to go convince him that the relationship was okay.
Not without my daughter, for people who don't know, is what?
Sally Fields had played, it was a book as well about a lady that had gone to Iran and couldn't leave. So kind of the same kind of situation where you go into a foreign country, your passport's gone, and you don't really have any kind of recourse or resources to get out.
Hold on, did you join ISIS?
I thought about it. Not ISIS back then.
So how long were you in Pakistan for?
Well, 2 years off and on. And it was really difficult because at the time I had to fake being in love with him, if that makes sense. Like
because
I didn't
protect
even
your
want
children.
him to touch me. And so for years I had to just bide my time until I could find a way to get out. And then, so we were back in Scotland. Eventually we'd gone back to Scotland, and that's when I left is I had convinced him that we were going to go on holiday, and I called him once we got here and said that I wasn't ever going to come back. And that was it.
So you had American passports for your kids or something? Like you were able to, okay.
Yeah. Dual. They have dual. Everyone has dual citizenship, so it makes it easier.
What was it like being a white woman, like an American in Pakistan? What was it like living there for 2 years?
It was weird because you're hated and loved at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's how they treat Arabs too.
So it's like, and your Islam is always suspect. Like if you aren't doing something the right way, always suspect. So if my pronunciation of you were talking about like Arabic and Pakistanis, it's a big deal if you mispronounce something. I got my head smacked in the mosque because my toe was pointed the wrong way when I was doing namaz. And I had said something, I don't even know what it was that I'd said wrong. I did in the wrong order. I don't even know. So this lady said that I had to do it over again.
You had your feet towards the Qibla.
No, my toe, supposedly your right foot has to be tucked under your butt first, and then your left foot tucked under, and my right foot.
Oh, when you're sitting down during prayer. That's a Sunni thing, guys. So I know this from Saudi Arabia. You're supposed to have one foot is sort of like parallel to the ground, the other is vertical to the ground, and it has to be, your toes have to be in a certain position.
You guys don't do that? Shias don't do that?
It's fucking Sunnis, man. You guys are just like...
Sunnis, literally, you cannot do anything that isn't prescribed for you. There's absolutely no opportunity for you to use your brain.
You even have to put your right foot in your shoe first when you're getting dressed.
The Shias have that for the toilet. The Shias have that for entering the washroom. You have to
we
go
have that too.
Oh, you have that too?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually what you just explained. So I've done some work in counterterrorism and counter-extremism through multiple companies. I did consulting for multiple places. And that kind of explains why white converts tend to be kind of the worst when it comes to extremism, because many of them have to prove themselves constantly to their constituents and their surrounding to be... I mean, that kind of explains why so many white Muslims join ISIS compared to others, is because in order for a white person to be a Muslim, they have to be constantly prove themselves to be a right Muslim. So they have to be much more religious than even the people who were born with that religion. So white converts sometimes tend to be more religious than the Arab Muslim converts, because they are constantly under scrutiny by brown Muslims who are very skeptical about their devotion to Islam.
Constantly judging.
Constantly judging. And that's why, like, I am, and that can be a general statement, and I'm not worried of saying it right now, but I am very worried about white converts in general. White converts have a much more conversion rate to terrorist groups than any other minority groups that have joined Islam. And that is, I think, many of it is because...
Most of the converts were pretty extreme that I knew.
It's cultural appropriation.
Yes.
It is cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Because are white people just feeling like bored that their culture is... Are they feeling like they're looking for something exotic and fun and interesting? Like, what is it?
I think as an American, I know, because I had belonged to a group of converts. There was it was like women married to Muslim guys. So, and a lot of them, over the years, none of them are Muslim anymore. I think there may be like 5 or something out of hundreds. But the thing that we kind of all had in common was that it was the exotic nature. It was Americans don't really have a culture. So they kind of feel like because they'd always complained that Americans don't have a culture, that would be their culture. So I never really, I mean, I understood why I did it, and I understood, we talked about the reasons why, but as far as like getting super extreme, because there were some ladies that came into it and didn't get extreme. Not very many though. Most of them, if you were white, and I think a big thing is you have to prove yourself. When you first convert, you're celebrated. Everyone, you're the most amazing person on the face of the earth. Oh my gosh, mashallah, it's wonderful.
Can you tell us more about this? Can you tell us more about your Shahada day ceremony or the people who were around you at that day?
Well, the first time I did it in Orange County in a mosque in California, and they were all Arabs. There was no Asians at all. And
well, we're Asians too, but yeah, and I get you.
I'm sorry, I'm the British Asian thing. It's in my head.
Yeah.
There was a guy that I had gotten to know. His name was Ali, and he was from Jordan. And he was the one he was a friend. He wasn't like a love interest, but he was the one that got me, that introduced me to people that would take me through what I needed to do in order to be a Muslim. So that was the first time. It was such a cool day because everyone was so nice. There was the man who he wasn't the imam, but he was, I don't know what he was. He was like in charge of the mosque, but he wasn't the imam. He was like, he financially provided for it, and he was like the father figure. He came into the mosque, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this wonderful guy's here." But I didn't know who he was. You know, he didn't have a position.
He's the sheikh. He's the sheikh of the mosque.
Yeah, but they didn't call him sheikh. It was weird. So, but he had a restaurant. He owned restaurants, so he threw this big party afterwards. So I felt special. I felt like a princess. And the clothes, and the clothes, I felt like a princess, because I got to wear, not that I didn't wear dresses, but I specifically wore a lot of skirts and dresses, and I was raised in a modest environment. Like the religion, you had to be modest. So I felt the more covered I was, the more safe and secure I felt. So I wore hijab from day one. The second even before I took Shahada, I wore the hijab.
And then you wore niqab later too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Because I went, like, I have to be even more of a Muslim. I have to continuously.
You got to out Muslim all the other Muslims.
That damn straight. I did it right, man.
Yeah.
So do you think that was the reward, the approval of other Muslims? Do you think like before that you weren't being noticed, you weren't being valued, and it was the community that see you as somebody significant and valued you and praised you? Do you think that sense of acceptance and sense of belonging to a community, was that the appeal?
And identity, actually.
I don't know, because I had that with the Mormons are very much about the community, and they keep you busy so that you don't have time to think. So you're scheduled from, morning to night and all through the week. But I had started to drift away from that. So maybe I was missing it, maybe, I think. Now that I hadn't really thought about it. Now that I think about it, it probably was that. And I felt included. I grew up my childhood was very bad, full of a lot of abuse, and my mom had left. So I didn't, it was chaotic, and it wasn't good. And I had been abused by a lot of different men. So I think I was a mess, to be honest.
That's a common thread, though, isn't it, Jenn? A lot of women that convert to Islam have tumultuous pasts like yours.
Almost all of them, I think. I don't know that any sane person that comes from a normal past would be able to convert to that kind of
Well, I know a white convert who converted to Islam on the day of the Boston bombing.
What?
Yeah, and she wore
like
a
that's
hijab.
Going to inspire you to become a Muslim.
Yeah, and then she wore a hijab like the day after, and she was featured in. I don't want to mention her name because I don't think she's relevant, but she
was that for attention? Because I loved the attention I got when I wore hijab. I loved it.
Yeah, so that is the thing. I mean, the question is, so in former podcasts, I was talking about how many white. So I live in America, just as you do. So the three people here are Canadian citizens. They live in Canada, but I live in America, and I do find that in American culture there is this like strong sense of individualism, and everyone wants to be cool, and everyone wants to be like being different. The center of the universe and different.
They want to fit in but stand out too.
I'm edgy.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. It was really fascinating.
So I do find the appeal of Islam to be strong, I think, here in the United States, because it would make you look different and you will get attention that you will never get.
Everyone wants to know, why did you convert? Why are you wearing hijab? Like, I got hassled at the airport. I loved getting hassled at the airport.
So you loved getting accosted at the airport? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, because I remember the first time I had come into the U.S. after taking Shahada and getting married. It was before I had my daughter. So I had a lot of scarves and shalwar kameez, which is the Indian outfits that they wear, in my luggage. And they were giving me a hard time. Like, do your parents, I was like 20, I think. They were like, do your parents know that you have these? I didn't understand what it had to do, but I was like, how dare you? What are you questioning me? This is my right as, an American. What are you saying to me? So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being challenged. I enjoyed them until my son was put on the no-fly list. Then I did not enjoy airports at all. I don't know. My son, I'm not going to say his name, but my son has the same name as some terrorist. And so he's on the no-fly list. He still can go, like when we go, but we have to go through secondary inspection. They have to, look him up and make sure he's not the same person.
Yeah.
And
I was on that too, actually. I could never check in at the kiosk.
Yeah.
I always had to, for the longest time, I had to go to the attendant. And, after a while, it started working out because then everybody was at the kiosk and there was nobody with the attendant. So I always ended
That's
up,
smart.
I always ended up going in earlier. There's some dude in Afghanistan or something so I always had to go up there. And they had to check my name and they had to confirm my birthday and make sure it wasn't the same birthday as the guy. But that stopped actually several years ago. I think they figured it out.
Lucky you.
They're like, this guy's a hardcore atheist.
Like my son was 3. They're like,
they should have a separate line for atheists at airports. And they should have a separate line. You should be able to go to say, listen, I'm an atheist. I'm not going anywhere if I blow up this plane. I like my life. I don't believe in anything else. So yeah, let me through. They should have a separate line. It should be like Nexus, where you just fucking go right through because you're an atheist.
I think so. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
I'd totally down for that.
So at what point did you decide to, like, what started making you leave Islam and be like, was it like your logical reasoning, or did you
it was all emotional. I came in for emotions. I left for emotions. My son.
So it wasn't any...
Suck, Armin.
It was my son it's a story I tell a lot, but it's my son I was working a 16-hour shift. I was a nurse, and I come home from work and he had dumped sugar and cream, double cream in the UK. I don't know if it's like a very thick cream, poured it everywhere. And I told him to clean it up, and he said, I don't have to, I'm a boy. And my ex said, no, he doesn't. And he told me to clean it up, and I just come off. My ex wasn't working at that time. So 16 hours. And so he told me to clean it up, and I did. And at that moment, I said, something in my head just went, I can't do this to my son. So that's what started it, but it took years for me to be able to get away.
How old was your son at the time?
He was like 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was.
And he already knew. He he didn't have to clean it up because he was a boy.
Well, I don't clean up anything, and I'm not even a boy.
So my kids are the only grandkids. So there's in the family, there's 4 kids, and my ex's, one sister could never have kids, and adoption is not okay in Islam, which I didn't really, or it's not that it's not okay, but you can't inherit. There's a lot of things they don't like to adopt.
Yeah. The Prophet Muhammad, his adopted son's divorcee. So that's why he basically said that it's adoption. They can't be equivalent to biological kids because then it would have been taboo.
So they were very wealthy, and so they could really give a good home, and she's really lovely. They're not too extreme. It's just a shame that they didn't, ever have kids, and the other sister's lesbian, so she was never going to have kids. And the brother, it can't have. He's also, I don't know, his sperm doesn't work.
So you were the great white hope. Yeah,
and then I took him away. I feel bad, but they treated that was the other thing. My daughter was born because it was such a big deal. It was the first grandkid, and there was I was getting along with my ex mother-in-law then, and so they threw like a big party. They had animals sacrificed. All of this was kind of new to me. I mean, I had been Muslim for a couple of years at that point, but it was new things, and it was all exciting. And but when my son was born, it was like my daughter didn't exist anymore, and they sacrificed more animals for him. They gave more sweets. It was like double everything for him. All the parties were bigger, and even though I wasn't getting along with my ex-mother-in-law at that point, like, we didn't speak for a number of years because I put the Quran on the floor one time. And
oh my God, Jenn.
Yeah, right? Worst thing ever. So she wouldn't speak to me. Like 3 months she didn't talk to me. And then I told this story on a video a long time ago. I accidentally put salt in the tea. We had people coming over, and
on purpose?
No, there was the salt in one container and the sugar right next to it, not labeled. So I'm trying to be the dutiful daughter-in-law and serve tea, and I put salt in everyone's tea.
So that is that's obviously not a religion thing, right?
No, that's a
just
crazy
like
ex-mother-in-law thing, but it ruins just. So she started
yeah,
bringing
yeah.
women into the house. She wanted my ex to divorce me, and because we were living with her, so she started bringing women, like her friends' daughters, to stay in our house for weeks at a time. And in front of my face, she would say to him, "Divorce her. Marry this one, divorce her." She hated me so much.
Is this all because you put the Quran on the floor? Like, did she know you're learning?
It started with that. It didn't matter. It started with that.
Why did you accidentally put the Quran on the floor out of ignorance, or was it something that you purposely did?
No, I
or
didn't know. Like, because when I studied the Bible and stuff, I would just, if I had to move, I took her from the sofa and put her on the floor just for a second, and I'd never seen anyone blow their mind like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's a big taboo.
Yeah, I had no clue what a big deal it was, and
that's what led you here. That's good.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Can I ask you another question? When you were talking about when you were wearing hijab and you found you like the attention and all that, you said that. So, when you hear these arguments here in the West, when people say that, they're wearing hijab out of choice or wearing burqa out of choice, because I actually happen to know somebody who wore the full burqa and she said that she did it out of choice. And Yaz actually brought up a really good point that when she used to wear it, she used to also say that, you wear it out of choice, but deep inside you didn't, right? You hated it. So what was it like for you when you were wearing it? You'd hear people say that, okay, this is no woman wearing a hijab or burqa actually really chooses it. But in your sense, it seems like you did, right? So how much was it a choice at that time and is it now? Or did you hate it back then too? Or
I started to hate it. At first it was a choice. Nobody told me to wear it. It wasn't really pushed. My ex even told me he didn't want me to wear it. He preferred women out of it. But something happened probably about a year into it. I was wearing it, but he still was kind of against it. And then about a year into it, I lost a lot of weight. That's what happened. I lost 160 pounds in like 18 months. And as soon as I lost the weight, he wanted me completely covered. He didn't want anyone talking to me. I was getting attention.
Why? What made the difference?
Lost the weight. Yeah. Now he thinks that she's going to attract other guys and all that.
So basically he thinks like having high weight acts like a hijab.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Actually, yeah.
But at the same time,
we have to have a separate episode on how you did that, because I need to know how to lose 160. That is amazing. That's that's a phenomenal. But anyway, I don't want to digress, but
totally
go ahead.
We'll totally talk about it, because I'm working on it again, because we'll go there later. But it's funny because once I didn't want to wear it anymore, because there was a time when you're kind of like, I don't know that I really want to, but you can't just take it off. You can't just say, I changed my mind. There's no way.
It doesn't work that way. It's not just a piece of clothing.
So your morality is wrapped up in it. You're seen, if once you put it on, you take it off, you're a whore. You want to show yourself off. You want the men to look at you and to hit on you. So, you're just used dirty goods. So yeah, at first it's a choice, and I really dug it. I really liked the attention. I really liked, I loved being covered. I loved everything about it until I didn't have the choice anymore, and then I hated it. But I kept doing it because I thought I really did everything because I thought it pleased Allah. I really, really genuinely.
Oh, really? So you were conscious of, like, it wasn't just the people around you. You actually did feel God observing you, right? Like, you felt like His approval, and you okay. So you were conscious.
It was both.
Did you feel like you have did you feel like you had a personal relationship with Him?
Yeah. I really, before I made any decisions, I made sure that I prayed. I really genuinely believed and bought into it. And I wanted when I say that every decision was because I thought it would please Allah, and literally every decision I made, including naming my children, deciding to circumcise my son, the things I didn't want to do, I did anyway, because I knew that it was necessary. Allah wasn't a nice guy,
So did you feel like somebody was actually listening from the other end?
Yeah, but I felt that way when I was Mormon too. Because I think being raised Mormon kind of set me up for being brainwashed into Islam, because Mormons rely on feelings. So when you pray to God, they talk about a burning in your bosom. So it's that in your chest, you know, that feeling that's confirmation. So they tell you whenever you pray,
or a heart attack.
yeah, right. So they tell you that feeling is confirmation for anything that you do, and you ask permission for, you ask advice. If you get that feeling, then you have your answer. But then you base everything on feelings, which is terrible. But
so would you agree that being somebody that is already duped by Christianity or some other con makes you makes your mind well conditioned for being taken advantage of by some other kind of delusion, right?
absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's worse when it's an environment like maybe like a Jehovah's Witness, Scientology. I don't know if Scientologists go into and convert to Islam, but I think in that kind of environment, the Mormon Church, a cult kind of environment, because Mormons don't kill you for leaving, but you lose everything when you leave, everything. So it's kind of it's a kind of death.
If we have met you before converting to Islam, what would you recommend? Like, if we had like only 5 minutes of your time and we could say something to you, what would you, if we could go back in time, what would you have us say to you for us to prevent you going down the path that you did?
Oh gosh. Listen, I listen to people who have experienced it and been there. I cannot. I didn't really understand how important people's stories were and their experiences and their lived experiences were until I've heard how much they're ignored and how much the lived experiences people know better. And I don't know if you can force people to listen more, but I think the other thing is Muhammad marrying a 6-year-old. That right there, if I had known that, because I didn't know that. I was told she was 18. And by the time I was already brainwashed when I found out that she was just a baby. So because of my past, because of my childhood and the way what had happened when I was young, I would have stayed away from Islam. I could not have known that he married Aisha at 6. I don't, or 9 or whatever, very, very young. You know, I could not have known that and still converted. I don't believe that I would have.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that the like there's so many. There are also commonalities, right? And like with Mormonism, there's polygamy.
Underage
there's
marriage.
also child marriage.
I was 16.
Yeah, and this is the same thing with Islam. You know, polygamy is sanctioned. You know, child marriage is part of the prophetic tradition. And you know, I wanted. Were there any common elements? I know that you said that you liked it, you found it appealing because it was different. But were there any commonalities or familiar things between the two that you found relatable?
Do you know Joseph Smith and the other prophets of the Mormon Church? And Mormons believe in a modern prophet. So he sits in Salt Lake City and talks to God. Basically, I used to believe he had a telephone line to God.
Yeah. Yeah. So do I.
But
by the way,
we were taught. Really? Sweet.
I just want to. Yeah. I just. Yeah. We talk to him all the time. We chill.
We were taught that
I fought Allah and Allah won. I fought Allah and Allah won. Yeah.
So we were taught the next best and truest religion was Islam. Mormons look up to Sharia. I mean, at BYU they talk about how they really look up to Sharia law. That they think modesty was a big thing. That's the one thing I mentioned. I was told and taught my entire life that if you lose your virtue by being raped, if you don't lose your life fighting for your virtue, then you may as well be dead. So we were taught better to come home in a pine box than without your virtue.
So virtue's in your vagina, basically. That's where it is. Yeah. After that.
Right. So that's very similar. So you were used goods. I mean, it was all about your virginity and staying chaste and modest. And then every 6 months as a Mormon, starting at the age of 12, you're interviewed by the bishop. And they don't do it privately anymore. They used to close the door with just you. And the bishop is an older man, generally, who's the leader of the ward. They separate the areas of Mormon churches into wards. They ask you about masturbation and whether if you've had anything to do with boys. And then if you say yes, they want details. And I mean details like how long, what did he do, how did he do it, in explicit detail. So, and then they want to know if you masturbate, when you do it, how you do it, how long you do it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, but that's across the entire Mormon church. That's what they do.
What was your favorite?
right? Was it good for you?
Yeah, where they're at. Yeah.
So it was very much about controlling, and that's not just the girls, that's the boys too. But it's very much about controlling the girls and the girls.
This is like something that even in whether it's in Islam or in Christianity, I think a lot of this is just, the fetishization of the Virgin Mary. Like when they go with the Virgin Mary, it's like, she was chaste and innocent and pure because no penis ever touched her. But God forbid a penis ever touch her, and that means you're not innocent.
Penises are great. You can't spell happiness without penis.
You can't. Yeah, thank you. That's good. Well, and the thing is, like, that's a one-time abstinence actually worked as a form of birth control.
When you left Islam, why didn't you go back to Mormonism or another form of Christianity? Why did you leave?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, but at what point did you just leave everything altogether?
About 5.5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago.
What made you leave all religion?
A friend of mine who said, I can make you believe there's no God. And I said, no, I can make you believe there's a God. I was so sure. So he said, do you believe in pink unicorns? And I said, no, that's stupid. There's no unicorns. There's no pink unicorns. He says, but I see one right there in the corner. I swear to you, there's a pink unicorn right there. You don't see it.
I feel it in my heart. It's burning in my chest.
So you don't see it. How do you know it's not there? And
heartburn.
Something about that, the way he said it, I just went, oh my gosh, there's no God. Oh my gosh. So, and then I spent 2 years reading anything I could about atheism. Like just
what did you read?
Devouring Dawkins, Harris, Hitchens. I just finished reading Ollie's book. Lala made me buy it though. So,
who? What? Who made you buy it?
Lala.
I thought you said Allah made you buy it. I was like, okay.
And then because I didn't even know that the Earth was more than 6,000 years old. I thought the Earth was 6,000 years old. I was a creationist. So I all these things, the universe, the planets, the science, all these things were new to me. And I had these kids that I had to teach. So we learned together.
So going from Christianity, so basically it's like this: Christianity, Islam, Christianity, atheism, right?
If I could just interrupt for 1 second, Armin, Mormonism is a little bit different than Christianity in general.
Yes, it's very different actually, but recently they're going through a PR thing that they want to claim that they're the same because they want to be accepted. But you're completely right. They're very,
they're not at all.
Very different. They're very, yeah. So, but do you find like going from Mormonism at the end, but Mormonism to atheism, do you think that was as much of a liberation as going from Islam to Mormonism?
No, the biggest liberation came leaving Islam. That was that, and I didn't really go back to Mormonism. Like I couldn't believe it, but I went back to church because I didn't know where else to go. I was lost.
Comfort. Mm-hmm. It's your family. It's what you know. Yeah.
But very quickly I realized that it wasn't right. And so
it sounds like it was emotional first, and then after that it was more cognitive.
Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't an instant thing. It was gradual, but I never really technically, I tried to go back, but then Mormons men tend to be very lecherous, and I was at church a couple times, and a married man came up and asked me something about if he could go down on me or something. It was something disgusting. I was at church, so I said I couldn't. I wasn't gonna allow myself to be exposed to that anymore.
A lot of people come tell us, and why won't you just let people believe? Why are you challenging their views? Do you appreciate the fact that somebody came and tried to challenge your views in God? Or like, do you think that was a good thing, or do you think that maybe you should have left you alone? Like, because what I'm trying to show to people is like, you're not forcing anybody to leave their belief in God, but the people that did end up becoming atheists, a lot of them say like, I'm thankful to whoever and came and talked to me about it. Do you think, what would you say to the people that say we should leave people's beliefs alone?
I wasn't asking for it. I'm glad that he did it.
Yeah.
If I wasn't open to it, I wouldn't have listened. I mean, it was just a silly little thing, right? I mean, it wouldn't have been a big deal. It wasn't like he was telling me I was stupid or wrong.
How are you speaking to an atheist if you were a Muslim? How did that atheist even enter into your life?
He was a Christian then.
Yeah, it was after I left Islam. He was somebody I knew from 7th grade. I'd met him in 7th grade, so he was an old friend.
Well, yeah, so no, I understand now. So you had already left Islam and you were as a Mormon, and that's when you met him. Because as a Muslim, you probably would not be interacting with any other non-Muslim, especially.
No, my family.
Especially non-Muslim
men.
Yeah.
Not at all. Even at work. You know, when I was doing surgery or nursing, whatever, I had to make sure that I stayed away from men. And my ex would come to the hospital sometimes to check on me. So you just really had to.
I have a question, which might sound a bit different than all the rest. So it seems like your journey to Islam from Mormonism was, many of it is based on emotional reasons, right? Is that a correct assessment?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it was mainly based on emotional reasons?
Yeah.
If you happen to have been in love with not, let's say, not this conservative fundamentalist guy, and let's say you happen to be in love with the same way my parents were, like liberal Muslims / secular, whatever, you would have stayed in Islam, right? Would that be a correct way of, like you would, if let's say you were married to Majid Nawaz, not necessarily Majid Nawaz, but let's say like a liberal Muslim who did not tell you at this exact moment that,
right, okay, if I hadn't been so extreme, if he hadn't been so controlling, I mean, he put cameras up, he keyloggers, he controlled everything I did, so I didn't even have access to money.
So you would have probably, because your connection to Islam was you wanted to have an exotic non-white guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this brown people were exotic for you in this moment of time,
mm-hmm.
and you were attracted to a brown individual. And if that brown individual would have been liberal, you would have been kind of like a liberal Muslim.
Probably, yeah. I probably would be on the side of the people fighting for Islam now.
Yeah.
But Jenn, aren't you the one that made your husband more conservative because you were trying to be more Muslim to prove yourself as a white woman?
Her husband didn't want her to wear hijab before,
yeah,
right?
No, he was very much against it. So the more...
So even if you had married a Majid Nawaz type guy, you would have been trying to prove yourself as a Muslim. So you would have made him become more conservative.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, unfortunately.
And you said that you were attracted to some extremist groups. Can you explain more about that? I mean, the reason why I'm asking these questions is because I'm very into the field of counterterrorism and stuff. And so for someone like you in that time, what would have been attracted for you? What would have ISIS done to get you to join them?
I don't know. For some reason, ISIS seems so much more extreme than even as extreme as I was. It's so much more vicious.
Yeah, but what would it?
It's baby steps. It's like a frog boiling. Al Qaeda, let's say Al Qaeda, because that was Al Qaeda was available at your time.
Okay, so it would be the same thing. I believed that there needed to be a worldwide caliphate. I believed that everyone needed to be Muslim, and however that needed to happen, it needed to happen. So I supported anyone that wanted to make that happen by any means. So if a terrorist attack happened and something innocent people died, it's not like I was like, yay, but if it wasn't meant to happen, Allah wouldn't have let it happen.
So where were you around 9/11, Jen? Were you a Muslim then?
Yeah. I was in.
And were you in Pakistan?
What was
No.
your reaction?
I was in the UK at the time. And
Can you tell us about the reaction, your reaction and the reaction of the community around you?
everyone was happy. Everyone.
Holy shit.
Everyone that I was around in
Everyone?
like in
Yep, same thing with me, Armin.
in that
Holy
in that
Oh,
Can
same
you-
thing with me.
can you
I wrote
explain
about
more
that in my
about
book
that?
too. Like I just people.
Like,
yeah,
what
but you
people-
couldn't find a single person that wasn't happy about it?
If they
No,
were, they
it's
would
so-
keep it to themselves, right?
Right,
She's
because you
talking about the
couldn't- you couldn't-
general.
publicly say anything against it. You couldn't, I mean, nobody was like jumping up and down saying, no, some people were pretty stoked about it, but nobody was like, I'm so glad all these people died. But at the same time, it was like, again, if it wasn't meant to happen, then Allah wouldn't have let it happen. And it was the great Western power coming down.
Where were you when 9/11 happened?
Pardon?
Where were you? Which part of the world you were in when 9/11 happened?
I was in the UK.
She was in Scotland, remember?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Scotland, the community that you were part of were not opposed to 9/11. They were like saying
No,
like,
No,
I-
that's what she's saying.
They're very conservative. They're very, the Muslims that I married into, the family that I married into was very conservative.
That's
And
pretty extreme.
my ex was the least conservative out of the family, except for that's why they disowned the lesbian. She never got married. She's always been alone. But she can't be around the family because of her.
Yeah, actually, 9/11. There was I wrote about this in the book too. Like there was a Chinese lab tech who came up, and he was very happy about it because of there had been a plane that had been shot down accidentally by the U.S. just a few months ago, and he was beaming about it, and he was saying all his friends in China were happy. It was really weird. A lot of
it's in
people
your
thought it
book.
was
I read that.
yeah, it was like there was a weird sort of like idea that okay, the U.S. is finally getting punished for all this terrible
Mhm.
foreign policy, and it's
Armin, where were you when 9/11 happened?
I was in St. Petersburg, Russia, and I remember all the Russian flags came halfway down as a show of
Wow.
solidarity.
Well, check that out. They think Russia's their big bad enemy, and Russia's flying their flags half-mast. Meanwhile, the Muslims are rejoicing and happy.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So to bring it back to because
outward appearances are different.
That's an important key point. I'm glad I
Yeah.
asked you that. I had no idea you were in Russia.
But it can be. It's also there's outward appearances. Like outward appearances, a lot of Muslim heads of state, and a lot of Muslim people also outwardly said that this is a terrible tragedy.
Khamenei said
Yeah,
that was a crime.
But I'm pretty sure like the Russians may have been celebrating too. You never know. I mean, there are.
But they're celebrating again. That they're
We're talking
celebrating
about
for
official
different reasons.
appearance of reaction, and then
yeah, of course.
But to Yas's point, you could actually measure people's reaction by their religiosity. Like in Tehran, the liberal part of Tehran, people were crying and they were like having candles in the street for all the victims, right? But this, like, people are like, oh, look, Iran, people are like sad, but okay, but these are not religious people, right? Like that's Upper Tehran and other places. I don't know. Yes,
Iran
it really
is also
depends.
like very, very pro-American. Like a lot of the people in Iran. That's I think one of the reasons that it's really interesting is people. I've been. This is a little bit of a sidetrack and a footnote, but the U.S. a lot of it there is some investment in Iran with the Iran deal and everything because they feel that the population in Iran is more pro-American than all of the other populations in so once the clerical establishment falls, then
they're waiting for them to grow up.
They're waiting for them to grow up. They're buying time. Anyway, back to the thing.
But so I mean, you raised an important point about like, so how well were you connected to the Scottish Muslim community back then?
Pretty well. I mean, I knew a lot of people. What happened was I got to know the wives. They of the men that were part of these groups. I didn't even know like the Muslim Brotherhood. I thought the Muslim Brotherhood was like a good guy. They were good guys. So
they are good guys compared to Al Qaeda. Yes.
But that was my first introduction into anything, any kind of extremist group was through the prayer classes.
Everybody's a good guy compared to Al Qaeda.
Yeah, it's true. And then the wives, the the wives of the guys that my husband always avoided, my ex, he didn't want to be around. I got to know their wives, and then I made him start hanging around with them. And it just kind of, it snowballed like boiling frog. It just, little by little, things became more acceptable that I never would have been acceptable before. So when I talk about Aisha being the deal breaker, I think once I was Muslim, it was easier for me to accept that they lie. See, that's the thing. When you study as a convert and you take these classes, even in like California, because I've been to a lot of the Orange County mosques and the mosques in LA. I have a mosque down the street from my house, about 3 blocks actually, that I've been to a lot. But they don't tell you the truth. They tell you that she was 18, and that it's Islam means peace.
And she might was. Who cares?
Anyway, who cares? Wow.
Whoa.
So
Yeah,
He's saying that even if she's 18, she's still a kid.
Because
I mean, it's a historical, like something happened 1,000.
No, it's very relevant, Faisal, when they say that this man is the best example of a human being and we all need to follow his example.
And he's the first
this
feminist.
is why every few seconds across the globe a girl is being raped. So it does matter.
It does matter for those who believe.
It matters for, of course it matters for those who believe, and they're the ones that are making the laws that have no marriage, no legal limit of marriage.
It matters for people that don't believe when you're an atheist living under Islamic law.
It matters when you're an 8 or 9-year-old girl and you're being pulled into a marriage with a 50-year-old man who's going to rape you and you have no choice. Then it matters.
That was a big deal. Like in Pakistan, the first cousin marriages was a big deal, and then marrying young girls.
Myself. I said like because I feel like
Faisal probably wants to clarify.
Be careful, Faisal.
You're a big trouble, mister.
No, I mean, I said like it doesn't matter, as if like for those of us who don't believe, it's like it's something happened long time ago.
Yeah, but it still matters because it's not just historical, it's happening today.
Yeah.
So
if people said he did it back then and it stopped and it finished back then, that's fine.
I mean all of.
But if people believe it now, it matters.
It's problematic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that.
I think what Faisal trying to say is like he's saying all of this is like he doesn't say that the belief in it doesn't matter. He says like he's trying to say we don't really know what happened because there's no historical document. So basically, what his point is like. We don't know what's true anyway. So he's not talking about, that's what I think his point is.
I mean, just like the argument we had Imam Tawhidi. It's like Aisha married 4 men after Muhammad. Like who gives a flying fuck about
that? Nobody cares about. That doesn't matter.
No,
I agree. Nobody gives a flying fuck. Fine. Yeah, because I'm not Muslim and it doesn't matter to me. But whether I'm Muslim or not, I care if girls are being raped across the globe.
Okay, so can I, Faisal,
but
Faisal,
like,
can I say something really quick before you go on? So the one thing I'll just give the example of Thomas Jefferson, who's also in his 40s, had sex with a 14-year-old girl or whatever, and he even had children with her. She was a slave girl, Sally Hemings.
9 and 14 is a big difference.
Yeah, no, hear me out. No, I don't think so. I don't think.
I don't think 14 is also acceptable.
Armin, let me just finish. That's not the point. I mean, I'm not talking about whether even if she was 9, even if she's 14, whatever it was. The thing is, people give him a pass. Even the 14 thing is like very, very abhorrent. Okay, so his people give him a pass because nobody today is emulating Thomas Jefferson as an example for all time. Nobody thinks that he was infallible. So people say, okay, he was a slave owner. Not only did he own slaves, but he also had sex with a minor, a kid, and he had kids with her. But he was a founding father in the 1700s. They used to do that at that time. It's totally wrong. We're not going to do that now. Now, if there were people walking around saying that he was a founding father, but he had God-given divinity, so what he did then, we could still defend now, and we can still practice now, right? Then that would be a huge problem, and Thomas Jefferson would be very, very controversial, okay? And
it would be pissed as well, because
another point, if people start following Voldemort, it doesn't matter that the story of Voldemort are not true. The fact that people think it's true and following his model is a problem.
That's exactly it. And when the infallibility comes in it changes everything. If Muhammad was just a historical figure and we're looking at all the good things he did for orphans, whatever, then we could say, yeah, okay, yeah, he was also, he had a child marriage just like Thomas Jefferson did, big deal. But the problem is that it's not that. The thing is, he's an infallible figure. He's believed to have God-given divinity by over 1 billion people in the world, and they think that he's an example to emulate for all time, right? So that's a key difference.
But the reason why Aisha, the reason why I say it's not important for those of us who don't believe, but the more Aisha herself is a very controversial figure within the sects between Shia. There are people until today curse Aisha in every prayer because of the war that she did with Imam Ali. There are so many Shias, and I always tell them can you guys just move the fuck on? Regardless of Aisha married 3 people after marriage, or she reached the war.
No, but Ali. It really does. Really does matter, even if you don't believe. And for this, I would actually refer everybody to an older video by another sort of ex-Mormon. Right? I don't know if she's an ex-Mormon, but I mentioned her earlier before the thing is that she has paternally, she comes from a Muslim background. Her dad was Iranian. Maternally, she's Mormon, and that's Lacey Green. She had a video called why do atheists care about religion? So look that up on YouTube. It's, I think,
if you're listening to this, by the way, please retweet us. We could use your support.
And it is.
Lacey's
It's a fantastic video. It's a great defense of atheism. It talks exactly why people who are atheists should give a crap about things like, what religious people believe and how it affects all of us.
But
so I think that.
Wouldn't it be better if Muslims all believed that Aisha was 18 when she was married to Muhammad?
Yeah, Faisal, it would be nice if all Muslims didn't believe in that book that they believe in, or they didn't believe that this man was infallible at all.
Yes.
Lots of things would be nice. But the truth is that there is reference to her age in over 30 hadith. There is reference to her.
There are 36 authentic
36 authentic hadith. You can't just change history because you feel like it's the nice thing to do. What you can say is what Ali was saying, which was, okay, so he did that in those days, and it was fine in those days. But in our days today, that is abhorrent, disgusting behavior, and we do not stand for it.
It's never fine to rape.
Of course, Armin. Of course. There's no question.
We all agree on this.
But my point to say is, if you want to change that, you can't change it by trying to convince Muslims of something that they've known for 1,400 years.
Yes, you're right.
But what you can do, you can't just make up stories and say, all of you billions of people that have believed this stuff for over 1,000 years, you were all wrong. Ask me. I know the truth. That's not going to fly.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to buy that shit.
They would be like, who the fuck are you, right?
Exactly.
I have a question. I have a question for Jenn, just moving off of this. And
I was going to ask you a question. No, I was going to ask her.
Okay.
I
like this new
army. I just want to say to end this thing, I'm sorry for freaking out at you, Faisal. I love you and adore you. And I don't want to make you feel like I jumped down your throat, even though I actually did jump down your throat. But you did deserve it, but I do love you.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I understand. And
Faisal, I would love you even if you were 6 years old. I would.
Aww. What?
In this no. As a kid, he's so cute.
Jen,
not that kind of love.
So here's the thing. As a person that when I became more Muslim and left Islam, I always was looking for a logical argument for why I was believing in what I was believing. But you were attracted to Islam for emotional reasons. I just have a hard time understanding how could wanting to belong and the emotional connection that you felt and all the emotional reasons made you actually convince you that the Mormon view of the world is wrong and the Muslim view of the world is right. Like how is it that all Mormons are all of a sudden wrong and Muslims are right based on a need for an emotional belonging? Like how did you make I just don't see how that
so how did I decide the Mormon church was wrong and Islam was right? Because prayer. I mean, I had convinced myself the Mormon church was wrong. I had convinced myself Joseph Smith. Well, Joseph Smith also had sex with underage girls, and he married an underage girl. He lied to marry an underage girl, and members of my family were married very young. I was 16 the first time, so it was I started to see the sexism and the misogyny, and it wasn't the life that I wanted. The control. It's weird that I decided to go to a cult that controlled me even more. But I prayed because I knew that was wrong, so I prayed, and my prayers told me Islam was right.
But how does like not wanting to belong to a misogynist ideology all of a sudden convince somebody that Muhammad
to go
was
to a different misogynist?
Not even if it was, let's say Islam even wasn't misogynist, which is a big giant if.
It sounds crazy.
But what would it make that convince you that, you know, Muhammad went on a horse, and I don't know, like Jesus was not the son of God? Like how does that emotional desire for leaving a community that you don't feel like you belong with translate in a different worldview, right?
Well, because I didn't see it as misogynistic to begin with. I was introduced to the Disney pretty version of it that wasn't real. So it was better than the Mormon church.
But even if it was, even if it's better, why would their view of how the world works make more sense? Do you know what I'm trying to say? This is one thing I never understand when it comes to emotional appeal to.
It didn't make any more sense. There was no sense to it, because as soon as I started, looking at it rationally, it didn't make any sense. So I was like, oh, I need to get away. There was things that was ugly I didn't like that I had to accept, that I accepted because of the emotional side of it. But there wasn't any, I mean, if I'd been thinking rationally about it, or thought that this is the better way, I wouldn't have done it. But I purely emotionally, it made more sense because it felt it felt right. That's it. It felt better. And whether it was because I was in love with this guy, or because I felt a better sense of community, whatever it was, it felt right, And
we all do that kind of thing in our life anyway. Like, we all just make excuses, and if something feels right, you just sort of get yourself caught up in it. Like you were saying, Jen, you're in love with this guy, so there's ugly things, but you're going to ignore them because you want to be with him, and you're going to move to Scotland, and it's going to be so exotic. You get to wear the hijab, and it's all like, yay, this is so cool. And then you just don't pay attention to the other things as much because you're too focused on the parts that are luring you in. It's much more emotional, Armin. It's less rational than you're assuming it is, I think. And we do that in abusive relationships too, right? You don't realize it until you're out of it, and you look back and you're like, oh my God, look at all the signs. How could I have stayed? But
yeah,
it's human nature.
Yeah, I had I guess one more question. We're also sort of coming up to an hour, so I don't want to take up too much time.
I have one question too.
Yeah,
I don't support pedophilia.
Thank you. Yeah. So,
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I just want to clarify this just to
just get it on record.
We know that. This is fine. This is how a conversation happens. Jen, so the Book of Mormon, right? The Broadway play, and by the South Park creators, like Trey Parker, Matt Stone. So when you see that, the response to, so you said people leave the Mormon religion, they lose everything, but they don't kill you.
Right.
So it seems like they would probably feel very offended by something like the Book of Mormon. But what do you think explains the difference between how Muslims would react to a play like that about the Quran versus how Mormons react to a play like that about the Book of Mormon? I mean, they basically take out, when you come out, when we watched it, we came out of the theater, Alishba and I, and they were giving us flyers. They're like, oh, do you want to know more about the Mormon religion? Here, check it out, and everything.
That's
and
cute,
they were basically using that occasion, to do. It was almost cute. Yeah. And so what is it that they're doing? What's in their approach that's missing in the approach of Muslims reacting to the same kind of thing?
That's an excellent question, Arlie. And my question was something similar like that, where I'm asking her to compare something about how Mormons and Muslims, how things are so different in the two communities, because I guess there's very few people that actually have those two perspectives.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I'd be interested to know, because it reminds me of Fareed Zakaria when he was talking to Sam Harris, and he was saying that you can't basically say the truth about Islam because it hurts Muslims' feelings. It's like, well, I'm sure when we say the truth about Christianity, it hurts Christian people's feelings too, but it doesn't stop us. We still say it, right?
The question is, how do you have the, I guess, how do you have an honest conversation while also being constructive? And that's what I really wanted to explore when I in my writing. That's what I try to do. But go ahead, Jen.
Mormons they're smart because they couldn't fight the Book of Mormon the musical. They couldn't. The more upset they got about it, the more negative press they got. So they were smart about it, and they used it to their advantage. So they were giving out those things after the fact.
Yeah.
They used it as a PR. You know, Mormons are really good at PR, and there's a PR firm that runs the Mormon Church. So they're good at utilizing whatever's negative is out there and turning it into something a little bit more positive.
Well, I guess because they're also minority and they've received so much of the negative stuff. So,
but Muslims are also a minority. How would Muslims have reacted to a play called The Book of Islam, for example? Like what's the difference in the two communities? Like you've explained how Mormons are smart. They've got their PR behind them. So
well, in
tell
the
us
US,
how you think the Muslim community would react.
The faith you're allowed. I mean, the faith doesn't tell you that you can hurt people because they've insulted you. They don't tell people that their God or Jesus is so important that if somebody insults them, that they're insulting. You know, you can hurt them. I mean, Mormons used to have blood atonement. They used to kill people that left. And there's massacres, the Mountain Meadow Massacre. There's 200 people, Mormons killed, innocent men, women, and children in the 1800s, or early 1900s. So they've done things in the beginnings of the faith that were awful, but that kind of, you used to make the symbol in the temple of slitting your throat and disemboweling yourself if you did anything, if you discussed the secrets of the temple or the church. They took that away because it was too violent. And they didn't really mean literally, but back in the day it was taken a little more literally. But that's the thing about Islam. Islam's taken literally. Everything is literal. You know, so if somebody does something, you have to literally do something to them because God's upset, because Allah is so sensitive that you have to hurt people. So that's the big difference. I mean, they're just taught, they're raised in a more peaceful environment.
I just find it so funny that this whole literal thing, like taking literally as if that's an option, like taking something literally is actually an option that only applies to religious books. And Donald Trump's tweets, you know, like, oh, don't take it so like the things that happen.
Actually, the apologetics for Trump and religion is very similar.
So similar, Armin. It's like the same thing.
Trump justice warriors.
Yeah. The people that are defending Linda Sarsour or defending Donald Trump or defending Muhammad, same mindset.
It's
They're
really
different
weird,
people,
yeah.
of course.
They're like, oh, he didn't mean that, she didn't mean that, this is what they really meant, you're misinterpreting it, you're blah.
It's all about the premise. Like when we were talking to the Imam, so if the premise is the Prophet is infallible, therefore everything he does is great, and when you're a good person, you try to interpret everything he does through a good angle. In the same way, the people who love Trump will say, well, he is a great person, therefore he only meant the good things, and you are misinterpreting things by saying he is doing something bad. That's I mean, that's a problem when politicians reach the infallibility.
Armin, you should do that for Atheist Republic.
We had that with Saddam Hussein when the vice president of Iraq said, Sayyidi, انت حتى خطأك صواب, which means even when you are wrong, you are right.
Chicken salad. Yeah.
So that's like one of the quotes of Izzat al-Duri, who was the vice president of Iraq during Saddam time.
But
he said, even when you're wrong, you are right.
Armin should do this for Atheist Republic when people come and they try to shut you down, right? And they say that this is wrong. Just tell them, you guys are misinterpreting it.
Yeah.
Atheist Republic is an entirely pro-Islam, pro-Christian organization. Islam. So you have to look at what we write metaphorically and figuratively and really look behind. And if you look at it as an atheist propaganda site, then you're getting it wrong. You're just delusional.
Jen, you're muted, but I have a question for you.
Oh, the final question, because I think we passed an hour already.
my question actually relates to everything that we were sort of talking about right now with Trump and Linda Sarsour and whatever. So my question is, because you're one of the very few people in the world that has an inside view of both Mormonism and Islam.
Double X.
Yeah, that's right. You're a you're a double X.
Double X. I was gonna go for triple, but I couldn't think of the third
that's good.
one.
You're perfect.
I was thinking stereotypes. I was like, what do you guys? I come from a medical background. I was like, oh, XX chromosomes. Anyway, go ahead.
So my question is, right now, you know how there's like the hijabi fetish going on, right? So they're all over Vogue and Elle and blah, blah, Playboy and the Nike swoosh, and everybody thinks the hijab is so exotic in the same way that you thought your Pakistani ex was exotic. So that maybe this isn't Mormons, but just American people in general. How can we get American people in general to see that this exotic culture that they're fetishizing isn't a culture at all, but they're fetishizing a religion? So if you want to fetishize Pakistani people and be like, oh, look at the beautiful sarwal kameez, or oh, look at the beautiful sari, or you want to fetishize Somalian people or Arab people or whatever, that's great. That's fine. It's exotic and beautiful, sure. But how can we get them to see that when they think that the hijab is exotic, or when they think that Islam is exotic, it's not a culture, it's not a people, it's a religion. So if I were to say, like, oh, I think Italians are so wonderful, I'm not going to start to fetishize the Pope hat, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm not going to fetishize Catholicism, I'm going to fetishize Italians.
Isn't it weird that they do that? Like, Islam is it's like synonymous with brown, and it's like you talk about an Arab and you only think of Islam. You don't think of Arab culture, you know, that it has anything aside from Islam.
No one thinks of me. Thanks for reminding me, Jade. No one thinks of
And you
me.
know what's interesting there is only like 15 to 20%. Is it Faisal? 15-20% of Muslims are Arab.
But there's
we're a minority.
I mean,
they fetishize, you know, Arabs and Arabic and there's another word I was looking for.
Well, I mean, let's we have to take credit for this, okay? We occupied 1/3 of the planet. No one is able to achieve that. So it's like,
what are you talking about, Genghis Khan? Anybody?
Yeah, but like,
but
modern history. So like,
how can we get Americans to see that there's a difference between culture and religion?
I think just keep repeating it because they don't understand.
Culture, right?
They don't understand that there's a difference. That I'm like, I say over and over again, Islam is a totalitarian ideology. It's not just a religion. They don't understand that there's no secularism. There's no difference. It's culture. It's religion. It's laws.
It depends which Islam, but you're correct. Yeah.
So they that's something that people don't really understand, that it's that big of a deal.
So they really do honestly see Muslims as a race.
Yeah.
They're just brown people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're from Iran or Indonesia or Egypt or Pakistan or Iran, it doesn't matter. You're all the same. You're all just brown Muslims. You're all the same.
And I say, like, Islam's not a race. It's not a race. It's not a race, obviously. And
so someone told me that Islam was not a race, and then I replied on I think it was on Twitter, and I said, but Islam is a race. First you hear a loud bang, then everyone starts running. And that's when I realized
my favorite is Islam is a race. It's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Or it's a religion of peace. A peace over here, a peace over there.
I sometimes I personally think, not personally think, but like culture and religion are sometimes mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
Like
they're always mixed up.
Yeah. So like, I mean, Arab culture. Yes, there is a secular Arab culture, but there is also a religious Arab culture, right? Salamu alaikum. Alaikum assalam.
Yes, Faisal. But when Americans are going to fetishize Arabs, where that's okay for them to think that Arabs are exotic and wonderful and beautiful and love their poetry and love their music and love their food, but not to love the religion is the problem. That's the difference. They don't do that with any other culture.
That is actually, I don't want to do a plug for my organization, but that is actually one of the things I'm going to work on within the next few months and a few years, is actually to show that there is more diversity within our communities than just the fundamentalist approach, religious approach. that there is more to the Arab world than Iran and Egypt,
Wait,
and
there's more to the Arab world than Iran is not Arab.
No, and Iran. I said and. I made and. Not no. I don't. I know that Arabs are not Iranians. Thanks for reminding me. But I'm saying that there is more to the world that we belong to than just the fundamentalist religious maniacs.
Yes, that's true, but that's a separate thing from what I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about are the separate. You're saying that there are different levels of Islam. There's conservative, there's liberal, there's blah, blah, blah.
No. Also like poetry and music and drinking and all these things that exist.
Oh, so you're saying different cultures within Arab?
Yeah.
No, and not just Arab, within the Islamic world.
Religious culture, the fundamental.
Well, even within Arabs, of course. Like Iraqi culture is totally different than Syrian culture, is totally different than Egyptian culture, of course.
But one thing you could do is quote atheist scholars within the Iranian and Arab history, right? So
there are many of them too. Because I don't want the word Arab to be associated with fundamentalist Muslim either.
This is insulting, actually. This is like white. If somebody says, "Oh, white people," and then it just automatically means like mayonnaise or something, like wouldn't you be offended? Like there's white people in Iceland, there's white people in Italy, there's white people in Russia, there's white people in Bosnia, there's white people all over the world. So in the same way that you don't want to all be painted with the same brush,
but they paint us with the same brush.
Racism. What was that?
So they paint us with the same brush. They don't apply the same.
But the thing is Muslims aren't even an effing race.
I mean,
it's like saying all Catholics are the same. Whether you're from the Philippines or whether you're from Mexico or whether you're from Italy, you're all the same because you're all Catholic.
We actually just recently talked to an Indonesian Muslim, and he was like, but Muslims do this to themselves as well, because they were like, he wasn't being accepted in their Islamic community because he didn't look Muslim enough to them. So he was like, well, I'm Asian, and these people don't know that Indonesia is the largest Islamic country in the world. I'm coming to this meeting with other Muslims, and they don't even consider me Muslim because I don't look the part. So it's not just non-Muslim that do this to Muslims. Muslims do this to themselves as well.
Do you know why? Do you know why? Because this is what Muhammad wanted. He wanted he wanted Muslims to be all one ummah.
Yep.
Regardless of your race, regardless of your culture, regardless of your background, regardless of your language.
Yes.
Forget all that. You are Muslim first and foremost. And 1,400 years later, he has succeeded, and that's why it pisses me off.
No, he hasn't succeeded. There's a lot of internal racism, and he actually failed. He failed while he was alive. He failed right after he died, and he failed right now, because given what you see, because Arabs think that there's a superior race. Well, Iranians feel like that they're superior race.
No, but Arabs really are, though.
Yeah, but the religion, the religion and culture thing is sort of like symbiotic, and they play off of each other. So whereas, for example, in India and Pakistan, right, Pakistani Muslims probably have more in common culturally than with Indian Hindus than they do with Indonesian Muslims or Arab Muslims. And Egyptian Muslims probably have more in common culturally than Egyptian Christians, right, than they do with Turkish Muslims, for instance. So the whole cultural thing is very heterogeneous, but there are two places where it plays out. First of all, there are some sort of universal Islamic culture things like Eid and Ramadan and everything. These things play into it. And the second thing is that
halal food. Yeah, halal food.
That's religion, you people. You guys are conflating right now.
No, but the thing is, it plays a part in the culture.
Eid and halal food go hand in hand,
Eid is religion.
It is. So Eid is a part of Islamic culture that exists in all of these different Muslim countries.
Except in Iran, because Iran is a huge competition against Islamic.
And Nowruz, right? You guys got Nowruz. Yeah, so... But what I was going to say was that the other thing is that when people, even cultural elements, like in Saudi Arabia, when women can't drive, right, that's a cultural element that is not necessarily, it's arguably, Islamic or not. But the thing is that the misogyny in Islam, right, that's codified in the Quran, that actually backs up and dogmatizes cultural elements and forbids them to evolve. So, for instance, Like in the US or in secular countries, cultures evolve, right? 50 years ago, it was one thing. It was Elvis and rock and roll. Then it became blue jeans and McDonald's. And now it's like everything, the cultures naturally evolve. But what religion does is it freezes them in time. So the Saudi culture and all these countries where religion is a huge deal, it basically freezes puts those cultures in a time warp so they never progress. So even though the women not driving, right, in Saudi Arabia is a cultural thing, it's backed up and reinforced by all the religious tenets. And I think so. There is an interplay. There's a symbiotic thing. You know, they both create each other and they play off of each other. But religion is just really, really bad for cultural evolution in general.
So Yasmin, so I think that we have passed the time for our podcast.
But can I just say one thing before we end this?
No.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Armin. Say one thing.
No, just something. This is something actually reminded me about a tweet I posted last month. What I mentioned is like Muhammad did promote equality among races. That's true if you believe the canon. But this equality is only after you accept Islam. So non-Muslims were still inferior to Muslims. But this is no better because basically you're trying to fight one sort of tribalism by promoting a bigger and different source of
supremacy.
tribalism.
It's more than yeah. So you've got white supremacists or whatever, like racial supremacists, and you've got with Islam it's religious supremacy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So Armin, Jenn, we give you the last word. Maybe your grandma can join us.
Thank you. It was fun. There's so much to talk about, but this was.
Was there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
Oh, there's so much. I could talk for another 4 hours or 5 hours about so many different things. There's so many similarities between Islam and Mormonism and the experiences of being a convert and just little things, little stories.
How can people follow you? Can you give us your website,
I'm at,
email?
I have a YouTube page, but that's accessible from Twitter. It's Ex-Muslim Mormon on Twitter.
Ex-Muslim Mormon on Twitter.
It's pretty it's pretty, self-explanatory. I figured, that's what I am.
There's only one, probably. Oh, actually, you and Lacey Green probably are the only two ex-Muslim ex-Mormons. Well, she was never really a Muslim, though, was she? It was just a heritage. No. Just, but you were actually, this is the thing, like, you and I have more in common, and I understand you and you understand me, more than a lot of Muslims that were actually born and raised in Islam.
More than us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, their experiences are nothing like
because Jenn lived it.
They were raised in like a moderate family in the U.S. or something. They didn't have to experience any of the things that I experienced. It's completely different.
That's right. And they're like, I became an atheist at 15 and I'm an ex-Muslim. It's really? Like, so I can't relate to them in the way that I can relate to you.
I became a fundamentalist, but I think even being a girl is also, as a Muslim, is a completely, and in a fundamentalist community is a very different experience than being a boy. And
the Sunni Shia thing is crazy different too. I never really, really realized how different it is. But there's a lot of, differences. I kind of wish I'd converted into being a Shia. I kind of...
No, don't say that.
I think
would have been different.
Yeah, but so I'd like to thank you for coming to our Ex-Muslim Mormon. That's your Twitter handle. Are you on Facebook as well? Do you have a Facebook?
No.
Okay.
I'm still kind of in hiding. I mean, not that obviously I'm out and everything. My name's out, but Facebook, it's too easy to find people. Facebook's it's like the worst.
You're not doing a very good job hiding.
I know, right?
So, Ex-Muslim Mormon, thank you very much, Jenn. Hope to see you.
Thank you so much for your time, Jenn.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Enjoy your time.
Thank you.
And hopefully, we're going to make the world great again.
Yeah.
Have a great night. I'm your host, Faisal Baghdadi. Take care.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the gracious support of the Illuminati and the great state of Israel. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. In the meantime, we greatly appreciate the support of our current donors. Please consider supporting by sharing the podcast with your fellow heathens or by donating at patreon.com/SJME.